No one dared to go near him. Behind the thick iron bars of his kennel stood a German shepherd with eyes so intense they seemed to pierce right through you. Volunteers avoided his cage. Even experienced handlers whispered warnings about him. He wasn't just unfriendly, he was untouchable. Growling, pacing, teeth always slightly bared. It was as if the dog had drawn an invisible line that no one could ever cross. His name was Ghost, and everyone knew why. Ghost had been at the shelter for over a year, and despite numerous efforts, not a single soul had ever touched him without facing a threatening snarl or snap. He was a lost cause, a permanent resident behind bars. "That dog's never going home?" one staff member muttered. But fate had other plans. One cold morning, the shelter doors opened, and in walked a boy, a quiet, nervous boy with hollow eyes, and a past just as broken. Ghost wasn't always like this. Before the shelter, he had a life, one that left invisible scars far deeper than any wound. He was found on the outskirts of a small town, tied to a rusted chain near an abandoned warehouse. His ribs showed through his fur, and his eyes were wild with fear. The rescue team had to sedate him just to get him into the van. No one knew how long he'd been out there, but it was clear he didn't trust humans, and he had every reason not to. At the shelter, they tried everything. Trainers with years of experience worked with Ghost using gentle commands and treats. A vet offered calming therapy. Volunteers tried to speak softly through his cage, but Ghost refused all of it. He growled at every touch, snapped at every approach. His ears would flatten, his tail stiff, his whole body trembling with suspicion. Whatever had been done to him had taught him one thing: people meant pain. Still, despite his aggression, there was something in his eyes, something that looked like sadness. The staff didn't want to give up, but they couldn't deny the truth. Ghost was unreachable, a dog once loved, now too broken to be touched. His name was Eli. Just 10 years old, but his eyes looked older, like they'd seen things most children never should. He didn't speak much. Social workers said he had been in and out of foster homes, drifting from one place to another. His latest guardian had brought him to the shelter, hoping the presence of animals might help him open up. But Eli didn't run toward the puppies like other kids. Instead, he walked slowly, almost like he was searching for something or someone. Then he stopped. In front of a cage everyone else avoided. Ghost. The boy stood completely still, peering into the dark corners of the kennel. The dog growled, low and threatening. But Eli didn't flinch. He didn't reach out. He didn't even blink. He just sat down on the cold floor, inches away from the bars, his small frame barely moving. For a long time, neither of them did anything except stare. The staff watched from a distance, frozen. Ghost had never tolerated anyone near his cage, especially children. Yet here was Eli, sitting so close the dog could snap at him through the bars. A volunteer stepped forward to pull the boy away, but the supervisor stopped her with a whisper. "Wait." Something was different. Ghost wasn't barking. His body remained tense, but the usual growl never came. Instead, he tilted his head, eyes locked onto the boy like he was trying to figure him out. It wasn't friendliness, but it wasn't rage either. It was curiosity. Eli didn't move. Minutes passed. Then quietly he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small crumpled sandwich. Without speaking, he slid it gently toward the cage. Ghost sniffed the air but didn't approach. Not yet. Eli didn't mind. He just placed the sandwich on the floor, backed away slightly, and resumed his silent watch. Ghost crept forward, ever so slowly, eyes flicking between the food and the boy. The moment his nose touched the sandwich, the shelter staff gasped. It was the first time Ghost had accepted anything from a human, and it came from a boy no one thought would connect with anyone. Every afternoon, Eli would return to the same spot outside Ghost's cage. He never brought toys, never tried to pet the dog, just sat cross-legged with his back to the wall, a book in his lap or a snack in his pocket. Sometimes he read aloud, his soft voice barely louder than a whisper. Other times he said nothing at all. And Ghost? He listened, watched. Slowly the growls faded, the pacing stopped, the tense shoulders relaxed. A week later, the dog started sitting near the bars, his nose resting close to the boy's shoes. The staff was stunned. They'd never seen Ghost like this. Encouraged, one trainer allowed Eli to offer a treat from his open palm. Ghost hesitated, then took it gently. No snapping, no fear, just a quiet moment of trust. Day by day, the gap between them narrowed. One afternoon, Eli pressed his hand against the bars, and Ghost leaned in, pressing his head gently against the boy's fingers. The shelter fell silent. After more than a year, the untouchable dog had let someone in, and not just anyone. A boy who, in many ways, understood what it felt like to be unwanted. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Eli arrived later than usual, his face pale and eyes distant. He didn't speak, didn't sit. Instead, he stood silently in front of Ghost's cage, trembling. The staff noticed something was off. His hands were clenched, and he was breathing heavily. Before anyone could ask what was wrong, Eli dropped to his knees, curling into himself like a child hiding from a storm. He wasn't crying, but his small frame shook with quiet sobs that wouldn't come out. Ghost rose immediately, no hesitation, no fear. He pressed himself against the cage door, whining softly, pawing at the bars. Then something unimaginable happened. When a staff member opened the kennel, Ghost didn't lunge or growl. He walked straight to Eli, gently nudging the boy's shoulder with his nose. Then he did something no one had ever seen. He laid down beside him, as if to say, "You're not alone anymore." From that day on, everything changed. Ghost was no longer the shelter's warning sign. He was its miracle. He began to greet Eli with soft tail wags and low happy whines. He let the boy brush his coat, feed him treats, even wrap his arms around his neck. But Ghost's change wasn't the only one that stunned the staff. Eli was transforming too. The boy who once avoided eye contact and barely spoke now smiled when he walked in, eyes lighting up the moment he saw his friend. Therapists noticed. His foster guardian noticed. Eli was opening up, becoming more confident, more grounded. It was as if Ghost had given him something no person ever could, unconditional acceptance. And in return, Eli had offered Ghost what no trainer could provide: trust without expectation, patience without fear. Together, they weren't just healing, they were saving each other. The adoption papers were signed on a sunny morning, and for the first time in a long while, both Eli and Ghost were going home. As they walked out of the shelter side by side, no leash was needed, just a quiet understanding between two souls who had found peace in each other.